online? Okay, no comments online. Next is the establishment of our regular agenda. Superintendent, have there been any changes to the regular agenda?
There are no changes to the regular agenda.
Thank you. Next is the approval of the consent agenda. Do I have a motion?
I move the consent agenda be approved as presented.
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Hi.
Thank you. That passes. Oh my gosh. My notes did not sync, so we're winging it tonight. Okay, so thank you for that. So we will start with our first agenda item as a recap of our work study, which occurred earlier this evening. It was a discussion of on transportation and some potential updates there. Who would like to get us started?
I just appreciate that we're having the conversation around equity in terms of equal access to different programs in our district, both programs that exist now, such as Merlin and Science Tech, and programs that we anticipate will exist, such as different career opportunities in the different high schools. And I think it's important that all students in the district have an equal opportunity to access these things. So I appreciate that we're starting to put some numbers to what that will cost us, because it's not free from a transportation perspective.
Right. And this is just an initial step. As we look at it, there'll be a number of steps as we move to try to figure out how to implement and how to manage the costs that are some one-time, some ongoing annual costs. And so this was a good step, and it was great to have real numbers put on paper.
I think for me, it's just a conversation around how to access programs and who is able to access our book programs based on the ability to have transportation. And when we really look at what do we want for every student, it has to include the ability to participate regardless of access to transportation, access to other things. So how do we break down those barriers? And so I appreciate the conversation around how to break down those barriers, and the fact that we're already talking with our legislators about transportation, I think is important.
First, gratitude to Martin and his team that put together these numbers. So thank you, Superintendent, for that. I'm excited that this is one of those conversations that allows us to start to bring things together and blend together the operational needs with the programmatic vision and desire for us to really give legs to our commitment to equity so that every student has that opportunity. Because it's one thing for us to say it, but then it's like, how do you actually do it? And this gets us to the doing phase, which is really, really exciting.
And unlike backfilling general education, which the state is supposed to fund, this is the sort of thing that our levy dollars are actually intended to do.
Thank you. I know for me, the idea of choice for students at all levels is really, really critical and important. And as everyone else has said, the idea that we can potentially help expand on how we leverage transportation to provide more choice, I think is a very important endeavor. So I also just want to say thank you to Director Gallinger for helping to organize additional conversations with our legislators to get this conversation going and hopefully make things more real. Superintendent, anything you want to add on that topic?
Great. Thank you, Director Gallinger, for recognizing Martin Turney and the operations and finance team. In particular, I would like to highlight the contributions of Jason Morris, Colleen Zadaro, and then Bridget Anderson, who joined us tonight as one of our transportation supervisors. So it is a team effort and much appreciation. I just want to echo that.
Fantastic. So with that, we should move forward to the next agenda item, which is works in progress. Superintendent.
All right. Well, first things first, I'd like to congratulate the Issaquah School District's Board of Directors for being named a WASDA Board of Distinction. So, this is an honor that I know has been conferred on the board many years in a row, and is a real distinction, an award to recognize the work that you all do. And so congratulations. And I know that this also puts you in the running for potentially another level of recognition as well for Board of the Year. So all that will be even more formally recognized and celebrated at the WASDA conference this upcoming November. So many thanks to you all for your service and your time and your intellect. And it's very exciting for the school district. So thank you. I hope you can share more about that at another point in time too with the community. A couple of things to share a bit about what I've been up to through the lens of some of our teaching and learning work and partnership work in the community. I do make it a habit, as you know, to visit a handful of schools, program and sites each week. And over the past 2 weeks, I wanted to highlight some of the visits that I have made. So at Liberty High School, I was able to walk the hallways during the week leading up for homecoming. And the theme was Liberty Looks Back. And it was great work across the hallways to reflect on various themes and games and experiences that Liberty High School students have had over the years, reflected on the walls, from Monopoly to Sorry to Legos to lots of different popular culture and media references as well. And I know that over 100 students had showed up on a Saturday to decorate these hallways in preparation for that week. So very strong, positive school spirit and culture. At Briarwood Elementary, I joined a team meeting focusing on welcoming the new students who have enrolled after the start of the school year, as well as a discussion on how to support different students through tiered support levels. And that is all in support of our multi-tiered systems of supports. At Discovery Elementary, I got to see an amazing science lesson, which allowed students to predict liquid volume and whether or not liquid volume would actually pour appropriately. Would it be over, under, just about the same with the other containers, which was a highly engaging lesson. Anytime you have water and pouring of water into containers at an elementary level, there's lots of fun and excitement by students. And it was all very controlled, well-behaved fun. At Sunny Hills, I got to see a great universal and tier 1 learning strategy set of implementation in classrooms with incredibly strong expectations for students that have embraced the expectations and are also internalizing their own choice in how they actually move about the classroom, shift from choice project to choice project in the classroom during their learning time. So that was pretty powerful. And at Pine Lake Middle School, I got to see the strengths and benefits from a very strong partnership between teachers to support learner variability and incredibly strong, rigorous task expectations in a math class. And just think dominoes as a game meets algebraic equations. So that was the activity and task that was happening when I was in the classroom there. This week, our district's executive team and cabinet worked with Principal Erin McKee at Cougar Mountain Middle School to participate in learning walks. Our learning walks as an executive team not only keeps us close to seeing how teaching and learning is happening and operations are running in a school building, but it's also a variation of instructional rounds for education. We focused on universal design for learning and saw a variety of engagement for students, different ways new content was being shared and demonstrated, and witnessed many opportunities to see students share their own learning of the different concepts in their classrooms. As a reminder, the Issaquah Schools Foundation Monster Mash is this weekend, and while it is sold out for participation, you can support this event by cheering people on as they start the race at the Lake Sammamish State Park boat launch and along the East Lake Sammamish Trail. I'd like to also recognize that we have several students that receive awards as Students of the Month by the Issaquah and the Sammamish Rotary Clubs. And both of those events happen this week. I'd like to say congratulations to one of our student board reps, Leilani, who was recognized this week by the Issaquah Rotary Club. So congratulations, Leilani. I got to meet Leilani's parents as well. That was lovely. And then I wanted to share that we have initiated, and I've initiated my regular one-on-one meetings with the Issaquah City Administrator, Wally Bobkowitz, and we met today and have set times, throughout the year on an almost monthly basis. So those are some updates about what I've been up to. I have also some other fun announcements. So key district updates we have some amazing awards that have been conferred on us from the Washington State Association of School Psychologists. So our district school psychologist group just won the School Psychology Services Award, which is based on our internship and mentoring models and practices and supports. So just huge shout out to our special services team and our school psychologists. We also had 2 school psychologists nominated for their contributions. Mark Gears it was recognized as a nominee as a potential 2023 School Psychologist of the Year award, which is also amazing. And Madeline McGregor, I think she goes by Maddie, was recognized as a nominee for 2023 Best Practices Award for Early Career Professional Practices. So really great work coming out of that team, and I'm happy that they're being recognized for their efforts. I also had the opportunity to meet with our ASB leaders. So I met with 11 students from Liberty, Issaquah, and Skyline High Schools yesterday, and we discussed several themes. And I wanted to make sure, in the spirit of continued student voice, that I'm lifting up the themes that we talked about. So we talked a lot about school spirit, which is top of mind, especially as Liberty Looks Back happened. And they were able to share actually across the group the different leadership activities that they're each doing in their respective campuses to contribute positively to school culture. They expressed interest in internships and work while in high school to foster career exploration and real-world connections. They talked about a need for even more support for students to help with career readiness and post-high school opportunities. There was a request for more support for smaller or newer clubs and activities, since newer clubs or smaller clubs don't have the longevity and the base to draw from for fees. So they're asking for more support compared to larger and more established clubs. They'd also discussed school safety. They also discussed consistency of expectations across classes, which ties into our executive limitation 12 work. And overall, they value coming together to learn across the schools and to make those connections. I even met a student who had been on the student group panel that was part of my interview day now over a year and a half ago. And he reminded me of his time on that panel and how they had voiced their feedback on behalf of that group. And said, I see that you're collecting more student voice. So tell me where else we are going with student voice and collecting that. So I was able to share more about our work and advancing work with you as student board reps, as well as what we did with the strategic planning process. And I also said, well, this is part of it as well. And we have more meetings to come. So that's on the calendar for the rest of this year as well. And then just wanted to give an update finally on our continued efforts to expand breakfast programs and to continue to meet the basic needs of our students. Yesterday, we launched at Sunset Elementary. And so as we consider meeting the needs of our students, especially at the elementary level, we see a higher number of participants in the breakfast programs with decreasing levels, though, at the high school level. And we're still figuring out the right ways to continue to do this successfully and to have the right economic model to support it as well. So those are some things that have been happening in the district and I wanted to bring forward.
Fantastic. Thank you. I will also share that I got the opportunity to be at Liberty High School and I arrived exactly at the bell last week. And that's very exciting at our high school. I should have planned my travel about 15 minutes earlier or later. But it was great. And I got to see a homecoming invitation poster and all as I walked in. So that was really fun to be at Liberty. So thank you for that update, Superintendent. Next on the agenda, we have a capital projects and bond update. I see that we have some team members joining us at the podium. Superintendent, any beginning words for us?
I just have a couple of opening comments, actually. So thank you to the capital projects team under Tom Mullen's leadership and in partnership with the communications team under Alicia Engel's direction for significantly updating the website for information about capital project expenditures, progress to date. So really great work. And I'll turn it over to Martin Turner to kick us off with his capital projects and bond update.
All right, I think it's on now. Thank you. Again, Martin Turney, Chief Finance and Operations, Tom Mullins, our Director of Capital Projects. We are here to give you the what is going to be a monthly capital projects update and combined with a bond planning and timeline update. So to get started, again, the purpose is to update where we are on some of the capital projects, tracking some of the things we've been talking about the last few months, and kind of where we are in particularly the 2018 critical repairs levy projects. Just an update on that, and then expand on some of the bond planning and timeline information in terms of where we are. Okay, so first, just general project tracking. We wanted to show you, and if we could go jump to first the website, the capital projects website. So if you scroll down, we'll use the 2018 levy drop down. Yep, that one. So these are now, these one page or summary pages are now up for our active projects. They include things like a description, some budget information, schedule, and status updates. And these will be updated on a monthly basis as we have new developments and as we close out our monthly budget status reports. These will be updated by project and available. So you can go on, you can find the project you're looking for, and you can pull this right up. Do you want to say anything? No? Okay. So we wanted to make sure you saw that. Any questions on those? One question, yeah.
Can you go down just a little bit? So I just want to make sure it's still, I feel like in the forms, not necessarily this one, but the ones that we've been getting on our board packets will still say the total budget is within, like when we get a change order and it says like it's within budget. And that language, I think we talked about that we didn't want that language. We wanted to know like very clearly to see what was the original cost and what was the revised now budget, but that language is in still several of our board budget status updates.
Right.
Thank
So
you.
yes, thanks. I think what I'm hearing is when we add the change order, it's a different place and it comes across in the agenda. So we'll take a look at that and update the language. Thank you for reminding us on that one. Okay. So
one note on this form here, we do have in the center section under budget, we are trying to give a little clearer information with the original estimated project budget, which won't change. Then the estimated cost to completion or revised budget would be what that is. And expended to date, and trying to keep track of the budget in a short clip right there.
And so if anyone is following along on a project, hopefully they can grab these, they can kind of see the history, and it's transparent as far as how things are moving along. So. Yep.
And maybe when we get a change order, we could just get a copy of that at the same time so we could reference it. Would that make sense?
Okay.
So just because
Yep.
the change order is attached to the consent agenda, just attach that as well. And then we wouldn't have to go look for it.
Okay, great. Okay, sorry to keep doing this. Can we go back to the slides, to the next slide? Yep. Okay, and so we are concentrating as a focus area on the 2018 critical repairs and making sure that we're working through that list and getting those completed as quickly but as efficiently as possible. So I did want to have a slide just to show you that we've added the 3 new projects that we talked about previously, and we've updated our tracking document, which is also on the same area in the website. But I just want to, I guess, prove it. So it's on there. So thank you for pulling that up, Stephen. So this is also on. So again, if you look under the 2018 levy projects on the website and scroll down to the bottom, underneath the active projects, this will pop up and you can click on it and you can see the latest. So this one has been done as of the close of the fiscal year, August 31st. And so as things, as we begin a project, we'll move it to in process. As we complete it, we will then move it to complete, and we will show the original expended to date and what it wound up being as it's completed. So, all right, that is the capital projects update in terms of tracking projects. Wanted to move into discussion of the bond for November 2024. And wanted to kind of start off with why a bond now. And I wasn't sure if you wanted to say anything to kick it off, Superintendent, or if you want me to go right into this slide.
Yeah,
Go
I'd
ahead.
love to share a couple of comments here. And, I think that this is a different kind of bond that the district, will be requiring, because it does take into account, as Director Gallagher said, a combination of things that have been kind of coming together around operational and programmatic changes and needs for the future. So it will be different. And in the past, our buildings were supported by bonds due to growth in enrollment and necessary and required upgrades. But we are taking this holistic view and using the sparks of innovation to guide us in shifts, growth, and changes to educational programming to inform capital projects and designs. And so we will be meeting needs for enrollment, which is necessary, and we will be needing to address necessary upgrades to meet the requirements of our regular cycles, but also the Clean Buildings Act. But we're really focusing on ensuring our facilities are supportive of access to programming across the district and supportive career-focused learning opportunities as well. So I wanted to share that as sort of a preview of what's not only about why now, but also what's different about this. And that does mean, different engagement levels. It means different ways of thinking about things. And it also might require some different capacity as we move forward together as a community in this effort. So.
Thank you. So moving to some of the known capital improvement projects, obviously, we're going to go through a process. We're going to go through another, a year of collecting information, engaging the community, and going through quite a few things, and as we determine what might be in this bond and what makes sense. So secondary program innovation, kind of talked about that just a second ago. Obviously, new high school, still addressing enrollment for our district, particularly at the high school, where even in this past year, we've gained 90 students across the high schools at a time when we're kind of stabilizing, but we still have those bits of growth at the high school. We do know that we have some building modernization and remodel work that can be done, as well as the Clean Buildings Act that we're going to need to comply with. And so we're gathering information on what type of projects we may need to do to update our buildings. Also, very important safety and security enhancements. We're going to do some research on where we are, what kind of things we can continue to add to our system and infrastructure to make sure we have safe schools, and that we're taking care of our students and staff every day when they enter those buildings. Transportation facilities and fleet infrastructure, there may be some room there to particularly add potentially land for any buses we may have that extend past where we're at now. And then field improvement and replacement. Our fields are on a cycle where they obviously age, and at certain points they need to be replaced. So we want to make sure we keep up with that cycle, and so that we're kind of ahead of the curve on and making sure they're up to date when they need to be. We do want to point out some of the unknowns, and again, we'll be working through some of this throughout the year, getting some more information. Cost of major facility system replacements and upgrades. We learn a bit about this as we go through our facility assessments. We will have folks help us with that and determine what kind of things we need, and that picture will become clearer as we go through that. Long-term enrollment trends and facility needs. We do have information that we know we need to address some enrollment trends as they are now. You can never tell too far into the future, but it's pretty obvious that we have some high school need that we need to address there. Property assessed value fluctuation, as some of you may know, it's been fluctuating lately, and you can never tell what it's going to look like in the near future. And so we're going to do our best as we estimate what the potential rates are going to look like. Rate of escalation of construction costs, that one has been difficult in the past. It continues to be one of those things that we have a hard time predicting, but we are going to collect information and work with experts to figure out exactly what we think that's going to look like, and try to, build into the plan what we need. And then the future educational program needs, which again, we kind of touched on. So to some specifics. So in November 2024, the date is the 5th. we would need to have a resolution filed August 6th. Mailings go out October 18th to 24, and then certification would be after the vote, November 26th. So what I will show you, I'll just skip ahead real quick, is we put together what this potential timeline might look like. The important elements of putting this together over the next 12 months. So November, December, January is really where we're collecting a lot of information about our buildings, what type of things we may have to begin our committee meetings. We need to do some tax rate analysis. Again, do updated enrollment projections based on what we know now from October and hopefully a November count. And then start working on potential construction costs and escalation calculations. So there's a lot of background research and work that needs to happen over the next 3 months. And then if using this timeline, we would overlap a little bit in January, so we could start our community engagement meetings in January. We can go over some preliminary, we could have a couple of meetings of preliminary information building and kind of getting people on the committee up to speed on what it's all about and what we're going to be doing. And then we could get the handoff of the data about our facilities and whatever else we need to jump into the more detailed types of meetings later on, 6 more if we use this schedule. At the end of that, that would be the point where a recommendation would be made to the superintendent and then in turn to the board. And following past practice and what might be in our best interest, we would potentially vote on a resolution in June. That way that's already in place. We can begin our informational outreach and go through the next several months providing information to the community. So by getting that in place in June instead of August, we're able to get started on what we need to do. And so that period leads us right up to the November 5th and would be the fruition of this work. I'll pause. That's a lot of information. I'm wondering if there's any question on the timeline, potential timeline? Okay. So bringing us to next steps, we would be forming an internal bond planning team, so staff wise, and who should start kicking that off and who we need to begin the more intense planning, begin our facility needs assessments right away. A lot of work goes into that, touching every building, doing a lot of work within each building. So we really need to get started to make sure we have time for them to do their best work. And then commence the community engagement meeting preparation. So obviously we need to think ahead and think what we want to do for those 8 meetings and how we're going to conduct those. So we'll start thinking about what that needs to look like. We do have a couple of appendix slides in there, but I won't pull those up. If anybody wants to see those, they're online. And I will pause for questions.
I don't see any questions. I know we've had a couple of times to go through what the process would look like to talk about the timing for potential bonds. So I appreciate getting it back, fitting within that time window that we discussed at a previous work study, I believe. We had that conversation. I think it's very helpful to lay out all the steps of forming analysis and discussion to be prepared to have good community engagement, as well as be prepared for the needed timelines. So, oh, sure, go ahead.
It came to mind. I know we talked before about doing the clean building audits, if that's described right, the audits that would go through our buildings.
Right.
Where are we in the process of having that work done to be able to feed into the bond planning as far as the cost to do some of those repairs?
Sure. In terms of getting started, I believe we actually kicked that off already based on earlier meetings and discussions we've had. So that one's kind of gotten the balls rolling there, and hopefully the timing is going to be just
3 years.
for the 3 high schools. Yep, want to make sure we have that.
Okay,
And so that should roll in right around the same time in January that we need that
good. So
information.
that's what I was looking for. It's in the works and it looks like we're going to be able to get that information in time to feed into this.
Absolutely.
Good. Thank you.
And that is noted on the Gantt chart on slide 9 as part of the data gathering and analysis. So it was very small font. But I wanted to tell you where you can find it.
Any other thoughts or comments? No, thank you.
Thanks.
Great work.
It's perfectly timed for, ex officio board members to play a huge role in ensuring that
I do, Director Gallagher brings up a great point that this may be a wonderful recruiting opportunity for committee members, for very knowledgeable and soon to be past board presidents and leaders. So some good recruiting here to my left. Good job, Director Gallagher, for pointing that out. That's awesome. Okay, wonderful. Next on our agenda, we have monitoring of EL 13, which is facilities. Do I have a motion?
I move the board accept the internal annual monitoring report for EL 13 facilities as presented.
Second.
Thank you. Are we starting with a student
Yes.
presentation this evening? Thank you.
Is this on?
It is on.
All right, perfect. Thank you. My name is Aditi Marehali. I'm a junior at Liberty High School, and I collected student input on EL 13 facilities. So I sent out a survey to all Liberty students through Canvas, through Microsoft Forms. And I sent the survey out between October 10th, and it was open until October 17th, so just 1 week. I received 237 responses from students, from an approximate total of 1,550 students at Liberty. So I just want to go through the main highlights of what I found in the survey. And so the first question that I asked students was to rate the following statements. I gave them a list of statements. And so the one that stood out to me the most was the first statement that I gave to them, which was that bathrooms at Liberty are maintained well. I noticed that 37.7% of students responded negatively, which either means they responded with a strongly disagree to that statement or disagree. And another 32.6% remain neutral. And so I think this does indicate room for improvement in regard to the bathrooms. And so while students do appreciate the efforts of custodians, I learned from a different question that I asked later in the survey that many of the students chose to respond to this question in a negative or neutral way because of the mistreatment of bathrooms. So the graffiti, inappropriate messages written on the bathroom stalls, etc. And then the next main highlight from my survey was about buses. This was another main point in the EL itself. So I wanted to ask about this to students. So the questions that I asked about buses were specifically given to the students who reported that they used the bus. And that's just so that I was able to get data from the students that actually use the facilities. And so of the students that responded that they did use the bus, that they rode the bus, 86% of them felt like the bus lanes were organized and safe, which is extremely positive. At Liberty, at least, that might be due to the consistent bus positioning at the end of the day, where certain buses will always be in the same location so that it's easy for students to find where they're going, so that they can limit chaos there. And then the other question about buses that I asked was if they felt that buses were clean and well maintained. And again, 86% of students responded positively to this question. So the next set of questions was about parking lots. Again, I targeted this group of questions to students that reported that they actually did use the parking lots so that I could get feedback from those who were actually impacted by the facility. So just over 3/4 of students reported that they felt the parking lots were secure and well maintained, We do have a security officer at our school who does routine checks of the parking lots. So I think that students are largely appreciative of his works. However, 62% of students responded that there were not enough parking spaces at Liberty. Just from personal experience and talking to my peers, I know several students who are upperclassmen who were denied parking spots just because of the limited number of them at Liberty. And many of them would benefit greatly from those. And then the last main highlight of my survey was the last question that I asked. It was an open-ended question, just asking if students had any other comments on school facilities. And so the two main points I received in this question were about the bathrooms and about just general maintenance. So about the bathrooms, students requested that sets of bathrooms should be opened at Liberty. That's more of a Liberty specific problem. They also, again, mentioned the graffiti and inappropriate messages. They also did bring up the topic of feminine products and having those restocked when necessary. And then as to the maintenance, students brought up the idea of having the lights continuously replaced around the school, especially when they fuse. While we did receive some constructive feedback for this question, it is important to keep in mind that I only received 91 responses for this question out of the 237 people that responded to this survey. And so the vast majority of people either didn't respond to this question or responded with, no, I don't have any other comments. And that shows that the ISD is moving in a generally positive direction when it comes to facilities. And that's my report. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Aditi. Appreciate that input. Well gathered and summarized. Thank you. Superintendent, do you have folks joining us to do your overall monitoring?
Yes. First of all, thank you, Aditi. Very thorough and very concise. Appreciate that summary and synthesis. And I know that some of the matters that were brought up have already started to be addressed, and appreciate you staying in conversation with your school principal, Principal Andy Brownson. So thank you. And I'll turn it over to Martin Turney. Martin Turney is with us at the podium all night. So thank you, Martin.
So this monitoring report is one we actually have done a little more recently in June. So some of the evidence remained the same. Some we updated with new numbers into the year numbers. So I wasn't going to walk through everything individually. I will call out a couple. We just showed in the earlier presentation the tracking for the capital projects and the 2018 levy projects. So we do link to an updated list within the EL. So that is the same information. So I won't pull it up, but we saw it earlier. Let's see. One new thing that we did add on number 7 is that we began tracking our utilization rate of our facilities. So from our maintenance folks who oversee that, we added this data in here that showed by the type of group who was using the building between the 6 and 9:30 p.m. Timeframe. And so what it has on there is about 91%, 92% utilization rate throughout the year. So that was just some additional information that we brought in. It's new, and if it's useful, we can keep it in there. Yep.
Yeah, you can go ahead.
That's the wrong one.
Oh,
Oh. Close. There we go.
Up
EL
one.
13, up one.
there we go.
There
There
you
you
go.
go.
With it,
Yeah, that's the one.
Oh, no, that wasn't it. I did have a question though.
Okay.
On that data. I thought that was really interesting because clearly our buildings are highly utilized.
Mhm.
I was curious why the time starts at 6. Is that because anytime before 6, it's just primarily school use? I just wasn't sure how you decided where to start from.
Yeah, I think it was just the delineation, but by the time our before and after school care and some of these school activities are over, that was kind of the point in time where we know those groups are usually at the outside rental groups or our PTSA or whoever it is. And we can always adjust if we want different information, but it was just kind of a look at between those prime hours,
Mhm.
how our buildings were being used.
And I know that if you're an outside community group using it, you do have to wait until after so the primary use is going to be the school. So it's really 6 and after that it gets used for community use.
On, I guess on that point, how does that play out on weekends? I
Oh.
hadn't thought about the time slot until just now. So
Yeah.
is that
Yeah, so let me see here. I believe this is more during the week.
during the week, right?
Yeah, and of course, we do have facilities being used on the weekends, but it'll
Okay.
vary depending on.
I love that
Yeah.
it was in here. I just hadn't thought about the 6
Yeah.
to 9 until you just brought it up.
I think
Because I
that-
know there's a tremendous amount of usage on weekend days as well.
Right, for especially around the, that was another question. I gotta, since we're in this section. So we talk about buildings. Are our sports fields considered a version of a building or part of a building? So whether it's during this 6 to 9:30, or if we were tracking on the weekends and we have outside groups using it, are the sports fields included in this utilization?
My understanding is anything that we schedule through our system is included in
Okay.
here, and I can
So
confirm
that would be
but
in there.
That's my
Okay.
understanding.
And this is all the buildings, elementary, middle, high?
Yes.
The one thing I don't see in here is any discussion around the theaters and access to that. So, if I look at our portion of it, it says as long as student safety, student functions and instructional programming are not compromised. But there's been an issue with outside groups using our performing arts center.
Yes. And thank you for that. That's one area that I need to check up on, because I know at one point this year coming into this year, we posted some part-time positions to be able to have folks staff that so that we could actually improve on how we're renting out those facilities. So actually, I'll use that as a follow-up and check on that for you.
And following up on the field space, I think would be more instructive for me to see what are the number of requests that we can't honor. Because I think that would be very informative as we move forward for our capital bond discussion. Because if we are going to that will drive decisions for like making investments for adding lights at Cougar Mountain Middle School or PCMS or Beaver Lake. Because if you're showing that, hey, we get 3 times the number of field requests than we can accommodate, because my understanding is that IMS is often used for IHS, because IHS doesn't have the community fields that are at Skyline, as an example, for them to sort of, flow into. That'd be really helpful information for us to know, is what are the denial rates, as well as for gym space, because certainly I've heard in the community that gym space is at a premium. And then there are many times where the reservations have been challenging because of custodial staff shortages or whatnot. So having some visibility to that would be really helpful for us to know, because that would also drive this, because the last bullet of your previous bond presentation of the knowns was field and improvements. So
I didn't have any additional new highlights for this one, unless there were questions.
I'll just say, I appreciate if you could just go to the top, that you're presenting this and showing it with exception. And I appreciate that. I think it's just good modeling that we do, that we as a team are looking at it saying like, hey, we're doing this, we're presenting all of our information transparently. These are our targets. We hit almost all of them, but we didn't hit all of them, and that's okay, because that's the intent is always aspirational. And so I appreciate that intellectual honesty and support of all the work that you're doing.
Thank you for saying that. We have also noted where those exceptions are within the report. So it's easy to understand as it connects to that top statement. So.
Any other questions or comments? So we'll go to Siddharth and I have to remember to do public comment after. Sorry. Almost forgot.
I just wanted to ask, I remember you said when collecting the data that you were focusing specifically on use after 6 o'clock or something. Could you elaborate on the reason for doing that when I think most of the facility use is actually like during the school hours?
Oh, sure. So part of it was to say that we know, students are using the buildings during those hours. You have a time after school that there are student-driven activities or things that you're using the building for. So this was a look at how else is the building being used and by whom. So it's kind of like that other part of how the building gets used outside of the main utilization that, of course, you and fellow students are doing during the day.
So on this point, do we have any public comment in the room on this topic? Facilities? Do we have any? Sorry, thank you, Stephen. Thank you. One more student comment. With that, we will go to a vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any against? No. With that, the motion passes. Thank you. Oh, Martin is still with us.
Yeah.
Tonight.
Don't leave.
With that, we'll move on to the next topic, which is an update on monitoring of EL 5, both internal and external, actual financial conditions. Superintendent, anything you'd like to get us started with?
Yes, I do, of course. So both these executive limitations 5 for internal and external require the completion of the prior year's audit. And so they're not for action now, they will be for the future when we have the audit results. And so they want to remind all of us that there are 2 other executive limitations also pending that are dependent on audit as evidence, which are executive limitations 1 and executive limitation and 6. So we are awaiting, but have received the information from the state auditor's office for the financial federal audit. And that report should be coming out very soon, but we have gone back and forth on those versions and we know what the outcome is. And that specifically the accountability audit is still underway, timing to be determined and referenced in this report as a note expected to be potentially released around December. So I wanted to call that out. And then for EL5, the internal EL5 report, I do want to highlight that there was a full overhaul of many different public transparency tools for our budget work, including what you've already seen just now for capital projects, but also significantly improved budget status reports. And I also want to recognize the board in their role for advancing our 2018 levy projects for Issaquah High School and stadium work and allocating dollars from the board's emergency fund effort from last year. So all of that is also noted as well, but I just wanted to make sure I publicly shared that appreciation on behalf of our team overall.
Thank you. I'm not sure what else I can add to that. I will say that the word I had from the auditors today was Monday, is that financial and single audit report will be out. It's not a definite, but that's what the indication is. And then as mentioned, within the next month or so, hopefully we get the accountability audit report. But I am available for questions.
I do think it is worth, I guess, noting and maybe having a bit of discussion. Director Moore and I have been involved in, she more than I, a number of conversations over the last couple of weeks regarding this audit with a number of folks, OSPI, WASDA, as well as the state auditor's office. I might call them spirited discussions over the last couple of weeks. So I don't know, Director Moore, if you'd like to start with maybe some of the discussions you were in with WASDA, OSPI.
Well, this is all related to the state auditor and their analysis of the district's use and documentation around the FCC's Emergency Connectivity Fund, the ECF fund grant, and the interpretation that the state auditor's office has regarding the requirement for documentation. There was guidance given at the beginning for districts to go out during the pandemic and help our students and staff that had need to have the technology and tools to be able to have computing power and internet access at home. And districts went out and, assessed the need and distributed devices, and we were able to document the students that we gave this to. Unfortunately, the way our state auditors are looking at this is different than all the other states. So 90% of all audit findings related to the Emergency Connectivity Fund are all in the state of Washington. And of the 45-ish districts in the state that had this particular fund audited during their audit, 90% of them have audit findings. Clearly, there's a problem. And it goes to the interpretation of our state auditor. And Director Mullings and I met with the auditor's office, our local auditors, for the exit conference, and really stressed that we felt our district, our systems had been in place to be able to document the needs, to show how we used the money in the grant and that we had fulfilled things. And we escalated it to actually speak with the state auditor, Pat McCarthy, and again, with our local team. And again, we felt that we had fulfilled the requirements of this. Unfortunately, there was no change in the finding. I don't know if we were able to make some changes in the wording within the document before that finally comes out. And now, because so many districts within the state of Washington are having this issue, WASDA is helping to pull together the districts, the board members, superintendents, chief financial officers, to help us kind of now push on the FCC related to this grant, and for a change of their guidance to make it clear to our auditor's office in particular what they really had wanted. And they really, from everything, we've had people talking to the FCC from OSPI, that the FCC really wanted to provide flexibilities to districts. And it's the way the guidance for the audit came out, and then the interpretation within our state. So we're still following multiple avenues to try to have some correction to this. The next step after ours is released to the Federal Clearinghouse is that the FCC has 6 months to respond, and they can choose to uphold or not uphold this audit finding. And so part of this is trying to educate them over what the issues are we're having, and encouraging them not to uphold the findings that our Washington districts are experiencing. Unfortunately, the state auditor informed me that even if the FCC does not uphold these findings, the statement right off the bat was it would have no effect to remove the finding from our record. We also are kind of going to be working another avenue to try to make some adjustment there as well. So we are not alone in this. We are with many other districts in the state that are having this finding related to this Emergency Connectivity Fund grant.
Wonderful.
So in other words, the state auditor is really digging in their heels.
Yes.
Hence the spirited discussions. At least I was spirited. Maybe no one else was this week. I think what I feel great about, and what I know, having now read in detail many pieces of documentation, is that I think the FCC, as Director Moore said, was keen to allow districts to use their best efforts to determine student need or even staff need for devices in order to connect during the pandemic. The district, I think, did a very clean and very clear job of leveraging our internal processes to determine what that need is, to distribute those devices, to record where they had been distributed, and to seek reimbursement for the subset of devices that was applicable to this funding. the statement from the auditor's office differs from that, in that they are making a statement that districts could not have known how to do all those things I just said. We're not aware of how to determine need. We're not aware of how to track. We're not able, they must, or I think it was like likely would have asked for reimbursement for devices that were not confined to just that need. I think we've given them some good numeric walk on exactly what was done, and the very high knowledge within the team in Issaquah. Those may be challenges for other school districts, but were not a challenge for Issaquah. In that same discussion, we did point out that this belief system of what we would know or not know that causes some, from my perspective, inaccuracies in their audit report, which they have agreed to review. I think we will still disagree with their ultimate finding that they register, but there's some boilerplate or blanket language that they appear to be applying to many districts that is not Issaquah specific. And so it's my hope that that will come out. I think it is, frankly, I think it's problematic that the outcome of this finding would be opening up our district to additional potential impact, potential issues such as additional audits going forward and additional cost of audits. I take particular umbrage with. And I think it is unfortunate that even a reversal by the FCC would not remove this finding or turn back some of these potential negative impacts to the district. So for me, it does seem that it's a very entrenched position that will not change, and one I was very clear I disagree with. In totality. So that is, I guess, the part we've played, and hopefully did a good job of at least representing what has been very good work by the part of the district in this case.
A piece to add is some of the consequences of this finding as it goes to the FCC to receive their response to it. And as I indicated, it could be upheld or not. They could choose to have the districts be required to refund the money. And for some for us, it was about $420,000. Yep. For some districts across the state, it's multiple millions of dollars. So we are getting kind of word from the communication with the FCC that it's not as likely that they will want to take back the money, because they were trying to give it to districts and be flexible about it. So there's that. There is the change that would take us from a low risk district to a high risk district related to federal audits, and which could require us to have more of our federal programs audited, which to Director Mulling's point was that's what could cost the district more money, because more audit time will have to be spent. And we also shared, and we're collecting all these kind of impacts through WASDA. It could have a negative effect to our bond rating. It has a negative effect to potentially to the community and to our reputation. So this is part of the reason we're trying to share how this particular audit finding came to be, and that it is 90% of the districts in this state that had this particular grant audited.
And to underscore that 90% of the national audit findings come from the state of
all in the state of Washington.
State of Washington.
Yeah.
Yes.
That is 0.1% of our annual budget that we're talking about.
It is very small. And one of the questions we also asked, and we're hearing this not only from our district, but from other districts, is people don't want this money anymore, because the impact of having this audit finding is negative, and taking the money through this grant is just not worth the risk. So I think we were originally going to be using it for this next year. And now we're saying we don't want it. We're returning the money, because this is the way this worked out with the interpretation from our state auditor's office related to this, and the way we've documented, it's just not worth engaging with. And other districts are also returning the money, which is very unfortunate in a time of constrained budgets. So
Director Moralto said,
sorry.
Oh, so my question goes farther. So I'm glad you talked about some of the impact as we were looking at what previous presentation on going out for a bond, that this impact could impact our bond rating for such a small amount of money. And that we, so we're limiting our ability to continue to serve students because we are always going to be budget constrained. And, although it's a small percentage, what were we doing with those funds? And do we have to stop doing that? Or what are we going to have to stop doing because we don't have those funds? And my question is, have we contacted the Attorney General's office at this point? Because this is really an impact to how it's impacting us as a district, as a system. Our taxpayers pay into their federal taxes and aren't receiving the full benefit because of a what we view as a misinterpretation. And I think if you've got 40 districts, you've got a class action suit to then sue the auditor's office because of how this is going to impact. And to me, it sounds like there's no budging. And so when you're in a negotiation, you're like, well, we're going to have to push the budge then to someone else.
I would say Director Moraldo's reaction is very close to mine earlier this week. I mean, I think there's I'm hopeful for what the update in the document is. I do wonder what is our next. We're having this discussion now to make sure all 5 of us are aware of the impact for what is such a small amount, but it has an outsized impact on other things that we're trying to do. And I think we have to, depending on the final report and FCC review,
Right.
have to figure out what maybe is next.
Right. The FCC is asking that all of the Washington state audits are completed before they make a response. And so our audit and maybe 1 or 2 after us will then complete the package. Some of the district's audits were submitted to the Federal Clearinghouse months ago. And so because the FCC has 6 months to respond, the hope is that by the end of November, there'll be some response if they do it all at once, because that's when the 6 months period ends for those early districts. And so there's a lot of push in this meanwhile to have the FCC not uphold, not claw back money, and to update their guidance. And then what we want to try to do is push, and maybe use the Attorney General's office, that the state auditor's office should take the new guidance and apply it retroactively to this year to potentially remove the finding that way, which is a separate avenue versus just they don't uphold. So with the help of WASDA and these little work groups that are going to be made, we're trying multiple avenues to work, the FCC, the state auditor's office, Attorney General, potentially just as many avenues as possible to try to get clear guidance, have it be retroactive, and move us into a better place.
And just to be clear, this isn't, from my perspective, a blurry item. The guidance from the FCC in their original documentation is very clear, and that the school district be in the position to determine need.
Mhm.
They have not reversed that statement from the FCC. It is in the auditing process that is being applied some additional determination of what sufficiency is. And so it is, from my seat, it's a very unfair outcome, given that the guidance from the FCC is actually quite clear. And as a district, we leveraged the exact same process we used to record free and reduced lunch as an example. So we are using our way of surveying for other federal programs. It's not like we just drew up a survey overnight and sent it to some people. So it's, from my perspective, not a blurry item at all. It is unfortunate that it has all these consequences tied to it. But sorry, Director Gallagher.
I mean, it sounds like we also need to execute a legislative approach, like in our state level, because that's who provides the mandate for auditor. Because legislative action would probably be the only way we're going to get the retroactive movement that you want.
That was on the list as well.
Yes.
The avenue to explore. The auditor's office is an independent office, so how far that would.
And
take us,
actually it
but
has a statement on their
Yes.
website that they are not governed by
legislate.
legislator or governor, which is another interesting part of
But I
learning.
think all avenues will be explored.
All
Yeah, but I
avenues.
think that the public pressure of if it's going to cause increased borrowing costs for school districts
100% agree.
because of bond ratings, that's going to
100%.
get a lot of people's attention, especially since you're talking about the largest school districts in our state that are the most impacted that historically pass bonds.
Yes.
And so I think when it all comes down to the impact is going to be far larger than $420,000 to our taxpayers
Right.
from a bond rating.
Right. For
issue.
some districts, $5 million worth of money in this fund. So it's a tremendous amount of money.
But
And
I mean,
then-
for
and then the
us-
add-on of future potential borrowing cost increases. So I think we're maybe blurring the line to the legislative section of what some of those, but I think it's
But I was gonna say, I mean, I understand why you would want your auditor's office to be in kind of a standalone. But it's also an elected position coming up for election next year, 2 years. So I mean, it's something to think about. Who else are we leveraging? Because I think that the Seattle Times did something, but I don't think they were fully educated in what they took to print. Am I correct in that?
there apparently, is that where the op-ed written by the
think
state
so.
auditor ran? So there was an op-ed written by the state auditor.
And the state auditor absolutely believes they're following the guidance of the FCC.
I have a question on this. So as Director Gallinger said, it's $425,000. It's not a big piece of our budget. From the standpoint of the bond rating agencies, do they care that it's just a tiny amount of money, or are they a finding is a finding is a finding and you're dead to me now? I mean, how, you know,
Well-
I mean, do you have any sense of the likelihood that we're going to get hit with this?
I don't have I don't have an exact sense of how they would use this. I know that a finding is something that they would use in their determination. I know they're looking at things a little differently than they have in the past in terms of school districts. So I can think that anything, right, like this is something that that isn't going to be in our favor in that respect. I can't tell you if it's going to tip us over a certain threshold for them or not. But I definitely think it's not something that's good for us in terms of going out to the rating agencies.
And those agencies are national, right?
Right.
So, and this is a Washington problem. Are they even aware of the nature of the Washington problem?
Not sure, but actually next week we will be meeting with Moody's. So I can definitely bring that to their attention. Yeah.
Because for me, that's the impact. It's not the 400 and some odd thousand, it's the millions that we might have to pay when it comes to the bonds, and then, less utilization for the taxpayer. Like, we're going to be able to get less because of those costs.
And that is an impact that we attempted to share this week.
And then unmoved.
Mhm.
They were unmoved.
I will say, since it's come up a couple times, we did submit our recommendations for some edits they could make in their report. They did take some of those to heart, particularly some of the language around it was phrased in a way that implied that we weren't aware of any of the federal
Yeah.
requirements. So they were, we suggested that we were indeed aware. And we tried to apply them as we should. So I think they made movement on that. So that is one thing that we should see as a change once we get that final report.
I think the other avenue that should be explored sounds like we need to get WASA and WASBO also to make position statements on this. So if we have WASA and WASBO collectively speaking, that will get the attention of leaders in our state.
I mean, and you can get the teachers union involved in that. Because, right, the more money we have to spend elsewhere is less money we have available for everything else.
Well, you're now up to date
Mhm.
on that. And
That's how we were, or still are, but for us, it started over a week ago.
yes.
Were there questions about the draft report itself? Okay.
Thank
Oh,
you.
just
Sorry, go ahead.
in both of them, the here, like statement here, those links actually weren't, there's nothing under.
Yeah, those would be linked later. So
We
we
just
put
wanna make-
here in all caps as a placehold for the future.
Right, because it's not
Yeah.
released yet, the final version.
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure that that's,
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I noticed.
Those will go somewhere. Yes.
And,
Um,
and while we're just a formatting, can it be a little bit more clear where the exception is?
Yes.
So like the word
Yeah.
might say exception and then, because I know you have note as of such and such, but actually the exception is the paragraph above it. So it's just, as the person who has to write down what the exception is on the form, I'd just like to be able to easily spot it.
Absolutely.
Yes, we
Yeah,
can.
I think that's important for the public too. When there is an exception, we need to know exactly where in the report that exception is.
Absolutely. Thank you for that feedback.
And the last part I was going to add is just so people know, because the audit report is not attached yet because it's not finalized. Embedded within it is the district's response indicating why we feel we have actually provided the information that was required. And so that's also something we'll want to try to promote and share is the district's position on having actually fulfilled it, the requirements.
Yes, and to the earlier discussion, decide if we want to take that as maybe the basis of additional letters or communications that we want to share a bit further, or maybe leverage with those other, the other Washington State associations in WASA and WASBO as well. So not done, but at least you're now up to speed on that one. Thank you for that one, and thank you for your continuation on the podium with us this evening. And with that, we can move to legislative matters. Director Gallagher.
sounds like we've been talking a lot about legislative
Yes.
issues. You guys all have been handed out the one pager, and that's the draft that we use to have 3 meetings that we hosted at our transportation center this past week with Senator Mullet, Representative Callan, and Representative Ramos. And thank you, Director Weaver, for joining me in that. Really appreciate it. And again, Superintendent, thank you for you and your team getting the information ready for us. I think the ones I want to highlight that the messaging to our legislators is that our fund balance is stabilizing, which is great. And I think that graph in the upper left-hand box shows that stabilization. The middle one that talks about enrollment, while the table on the left shows an overall decline in our enrollment since 2018, the most noteworthy part is, in spite of the decreasing elementary and very slightly decreasing middle school enrollment, our high school enrollment continues to grow. And it's continuing to set records over the past several years and have a higher high school enrollment than we did when we requested, and the community broadly supported, a $533 million bond in 2016 to build another comprehensive high school. And now we have even more high school students than we did then. So I think Issaquah is bucking the trend with enrollment, even in areas that we're surrounded by. And we wanted to show the need for, why do we still need another high school? With that, we as a board have talked about with our administration on, well, with this pause and needing additional funding to build that next high school, is what does high school look like in the Issaquah School District? And what is the experiences that we can bring to bear for that? And how could we offer specialty programming and skill opportunity building, and so there's more career readiness, whether you're 4-year college bound or not, it'll still be very helpful for each of you. And in order for us to do that and place these programs at our 4 large high schools, we would want to make sure that there's access. And so this year, our focus with meeting with our legislative leaders is we want to show and showcase that transportation is going to be essential for us to fuel and unlock innovation and access to that for our students. And so it was mapping out the costs for if we had open enrollment in our high schools, what would that look like? And how would you get from point A to point B, which is what our transportation does beautifully for 10,000 students a day. And so that was a really, I think, well-received conversation with our legislators. And we will have 3 more scheduled, none this week. But they've been tough to get scheduled for the next 3. But that's walking through the document as is. I think the big thing that I was told to bold by them is the one-time costs, right? That line underneath the last table is something that they really wanted to make sure that was bolded so everyone would see that it's not just the ongoing operational costs that was calculated, but there is a cost. And that's why it was on the list for transportation in the bond, because there is a one-time cost of buying a lot more buses, and then more importantly, land to put those buses, because we have a transportation center on the plateau that is full, and we have one across from IHS, which is full. So we need another space for more buses. So that was sort of highlight. I don't know if there's other parts that I missed that you wanted to share.
Well, I was
Dr.
just
Weaver.
going to say, I thought you made a really good point when you talked to them about the fact that they tell us as districts that they really want to see us innovate and do challenging things, and things like Gibson Eck and project-based learning and all of this stuff, which is so good for students. And yet, intentionally or unintentionally, they set rules in place that make it very, very difficult for us to do that, right? Gibson Eck had to get all kinds of special Board of Education approval because it doesn't follow the butts in seats way of funding schools, because you're off at internships, you're not at school. And this is just another thing like that. We want to have these career opportunities. We want to have equitable access for all of our students to have these opportunities. And that costs us money that isn't considered basic education. And look at how much money this is going to cost us. So I thought that was a really good point, because you've got all of these things they want, and all of these ways they make it difficult or impossible for us to do that. And you could see each and every one of them kind of went, oh, yeah, I guess. So that was a conversation worth having.
It's very important that we continue to work with our legislators. So I appreciate the space and time that was facilitated and set up by Director Gallagher. And as we continue to go forward in partnership with our legislators to advocate for funding the things that we need, it allows us to then leverage those dollars if they come to fruition and are successful for other things. And it's about generating and growing the pie of resources to ensure that our students get what they need and that we are providing access across the board. I do think that the conversation and the different threads of how our students from the student leaders that I met with yesterday are talking about the desire to do more career ready, real hands-on experiences now does mean there has to be a shift in how we look at secondary innovation. And so that's a very promising thing for our community and for many generations to come.
I am planning agenda for Large Schools Caucus for WASDA in Bellevue that Friday morning of our WASDA annual conference. And so it seems like the topic should be the connectivity audit finding, because I imagine most of the districts in that category would be the ones that are the most impacted. So I will take that, and if you have, based on your conversations, a list of the known districts that already have had findings, that would be helpful for me. And if there's a particular guest speaker topic or person that you think that we could invite to be there as part of that, based on your already dialogue or things that the next step of the conversation, that would be helpful for me to know as well as I plan that agenda.
Thank you for the update. Any other items to share in this section? Other connections? If not, we can go on to announcements, correspondence, anything in addition to what is already included in the agenda? Okay, thank you. That leads us to calendaring and future agenda topics. Do we have anything specific we're supposed to calendar? I don't think I have anything.
We were going to maybe spend a couple of minutes talking about Bethany had sent Marnie and me a number of questions about student participation at WASDA and would they sit with us? Would they sit on their own? Would they go to their own breakout sessions, or did they want to connect with a board member and go to sessions with individual board members? And I was starting to respond like, well, you know, we've never done it that way before. But then as I'm typing that, I'm thinking there's no reason we couldn't. And so it's sort of a question of, do board members want to, you know, adopt a student? Do you want to just leave it to the students if they want to? Because we don't always go to the same session. A lot of times we divide and conquer. Sometimes we do. So it was just a lot of open-endedness in terms of, did the students want to function as their own block, going off and doing things in a block, or did they want to connect with board members and go to different things? And I mean, I'm totally flexible. I thought it was worth a conversation with the board and maybe the students.
I definitely would love to hear from the students. I do think that WASDA will have some things that are geared towards student
Yes.
reps that are in attendance. And so that would, for me, always be the priority for them, like hang out with the other students, find out what they're doing. Because we still are in a learning process with this, right? So this year is different than last year. And so how do we make this a better fit for you guys? I think that's important.
And I would like to get this in a place where next year you guys can go to WASDA and say, this is how a really large school district deals successfully with student reps.
That would be great.
Right?
Yeah.
And I heard Marcel's going to be our table getter. Is that what I heard?
Oh,
Tell me,
that'd be
the-
awesome.
The tables are a big deal. So
And we're
getting
easily
access
two full
to, I
tables.
was
We
going
have
to say,
7
we'll be
board
two
members.
full.
We
yeah,
will
we'll be
have-
two full tables.
We will have additional team members. So Martin Turney and Marcel Hazard will both be attending. So
Yeah,
we will all
Yeah.
play a role in table securing.
we easily have 2 full tables at least.
Bellevue, there will be a lot of students attending, and so there has generally been educational track for students that
Mhm.
they are sequestered, even with their own social programming.
Is it all day? I mean, is there a student thing at every session?
I think there's a lot that they're recommended to attend.
Okay.
But I mean, nothing is like locked in. So
Yeah.
I would agree that it would be sort of, I think, an early on conversation once we get our booklets on what should you do, what are the parts, when should we reconnect, are you, type of thing would be helpful.
I do think that when it's board time to get, when we're together with the students, as far as like at lunch or at breakfast, having us intermingle so that
Oh, yeah.
it's like the students aren't here and the board's over here, I think would be good. But so I think like on breakfast on Friday, there's the large school caucus. And so I kind of mentioned that many of us will likely attend that. So you're welcome to join us for that rather than just taking your food and going into an empty room. You can bring your food. There'll be tables there. So you get your food and then you come and join the caucus. So that might be something that you want to do.
And the board is also presenting a breakout session bright and early Saturday morning. So that could be fun or that could be boring. I don't know. That's something else to do.
I think that's must-see TV.
Well, I think it is for the board.
Well, it would be,
Now, that one was more about community engagement, but
but I think if we
The
can even
students are
hear
part of
from
that.
students about how, if any of them were a part of that community engagement, I don't know if any of them were.
Were any of our student reps on the interview panel.
Not to my knowledge, unless someone's not told me that, but I don't believe so.
Because I'm sure it would have come up in interview.
We did have a Gibson X student on the shadow committee, didn't we? The shadow interview committee? Wasn't it Gibson X? It wasn't one of these two, but I mean, it's a small school. You probably knew.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. We did have a Gibson student.
So so what do we need to do? Just get the actual agenda and then sort out the days? and
Yeah, I
figure
think
out-
getting together that first meal, so that first lunch on
So
Friday,
Well, wait.
Well, no, Thursday has dinner.
sorry, first lunch on, oh, so for what?
Thursday.
Oh, sorry.
The
Yeah, you're
Thursday
right. It's
night-
out for the dinner now. Sorry, it's very different.
It is.
very different.
There's a student thing on Thursday.
There
So-
is.
so
that
Thurs-
Marcel is taking them to.
Thursday night, there's a concurrent set of activities for student representatives, which we, when there are specific student spaces,
Yeah, yeah.
that's what our students should go do. And there's nothing else for students for Thursday. And then Friday, there are, well, we've settled on the recommendation for the breakfast time, which is to attend the large caucus meeting. And now you have some context for what will likely be discussed because it will be organized by Director Gallinger. And then there's the opening session. We'll all sit together for that. Then there's at the first breakout, there are just a variety. It's not overly evident what actually would be for students or not, although there's some, you can derive your way into it. So we could make a plan to huddle together, right? Even that during that breakfast. So we can, because people sometimes, see something differently and we can, divide and conquer in that way. And using the touch points of the keynotes to regain plan.
Sounds good.
Yeah, and the keynote speakers are generally pretty good. And somebody, Marnie, you said that Erin Jones is
MC.
MC
emceeing.
again.
She's emceeing and then she's, I think, the keynote on Saturday.
She's very good.
And she's with the students on the Thursday night dinner.
Oh, she is.
Mhm.
Oh, well, that's awesome.
Sounds like we have a plan.
Okay, well, and we can, the board can go off and review the agenda and maybe we can touch base again. We have one more meeting before WASDA, right? Our
Yes.
November meeting. is
Our
before
November
conference.
meetings before conference.
And do we, since we're talking about WASDA, do we have our new oncoming board
Yes,
members
well,
participating and have they?
there are
Two slots.
two slots reserved. Bethany will correct me if I'm wrong. There are two slots reserved for board boot camp. Of course, it would be premature to put names on those, although one of them is unopposed, so not too premature. So board boot camp and open public meetings, public records training,
The open government training.
open government. Thank you. I always forget the words. So they are signed up to do that.
And do they know they're signed up to do these things?
Yes, yes, they do.
Okay.
Yes, they do. And then they would presumably join us at the dinner.
And when is there a board night out that's
Yeah, on Friday.
That's Friday.
Friday,
planned?
Friday, yes.
Yes, at 13 points.
We have a reservation.
And that's the reservation is for about 20 people.
Yeah, because we have our students.
So,
The board is
Because we
big
take our
and then,
students out to dinner.
yes,
yeah.
yep. So Friday's a long day and I did want to confirm a bit of an email change that Director Weaver and Director Moraldo and I were having with Bethany around Saturday is strongly encouraged for students. So Friday is the big day. And then if you want to share more or open that up for discussion, that would be great.
Yeah, it's pretty much a 2-day conference. So we used to have 3-day and then 90% of the people didn't show up for Sunday. That's when they would leave. But Saturday still goes through, I think, probably 3:30. Well, actually, it would probably be 4:00. So it is a full day of,
With 3 breakout sessions.
Yeah. so
And a keynote lunch.
Right.
breakfast. Well, 10 o'clock. It's the morning.
So in the past, it's been like a 2.5-day conference. And so this is a 2-day, but you're encouraged, if you have that Saturday, if you don't, we completely understand if you have an other obligation because it is a Saturday, but it would be great if you could be there.
Mhm.
We will be
We will.
We will be there.
All
Thursday
day.
night, Friday and Saturday.
And Harlan and I will be there Wednesday.
Oh, lucky you.
Yeah.
Any other items?
Yeah, I didn't register for a pre-conference.